Okay, welcome back to Living Environment. We're still on Unit 0, focusing on our science skills. Today, we're going to be looking at our first scientific skill, which is reading and annotating scientific text and data. Now, to read science text, it's going to be a little bit different than reading an English class. So we have to have our own protocol to really dive into the dense material. In fact, we're going to read every passage 3 times. The first time focusing on the word, second time focusing on a sentence, and the third time we're going to be summarizing. But let's break that down a little bit more. For the first read, listen and read along and annotate and highlight key terms. So I'm going to be reading it aloud, either pre-recorded or reading it out loud to you, and you're just going to follow along, reading with your eyes or maybe even tracking with your finger, focusing on understanding what does this really mean. Anytime we hit one of our pre-established vocabulary words, so you guys already know for this unit we've talked about graphing, so when you see one of those vocabulary words, you just need to annotate it, which for us means underlining and writing the definition somewhere on the page, the little line to connect it. And finally, when you finish reading, we're going to highlight just one key term from the vocabulary. It's the most important term that really tells us what we just read. So for example, with a paragraph like this, you would see, if it's online, one of these little audio buttons, you would click it and you would start to hear my voice. And as you're reading, you're just going to keep following along until you hit one of our vocab words, such as charts and graphs. Now we know our annotation for that is dry mix, dependent on the Y and dependent on the X-axis. So after you finish annotating, we need to pick one word that really summarizes what this reading is all about. For this reading, I chose the word bleaching. Coral would have also been a good choice, but bleaching really shows the action of what's happening in this reading. For the second time, you'll be reading it on your own. For this reading, you need to underline the most important sentence. Which sentence out of the whole passage really captures the essence of your reading? And finally, you're going to summarize it. Write a brief summary. What was this about? Or what's a question you have after reading it? So back to our paragraph on these really cool coral. Hopefully you get a chance to read it from yourself after this video is over. But for the one sentence that I chose that makes the most sense is specifically they tested the hypothesis that high CO2 levels, which makes the ocean waters more acidic, might also promote bleaching. Because that essentially is the hypothesis that they were testing. And in my summary, I said that scientists believe that large amounts of CO2 kill organisms in coral, which of course leads to bleaching. Now, the third step is not one we always take. We're going to save it for passages that are really dense or contain a lot of vital information. So for this, we would have a 4-3-2-1 note catcher. So something like the coral reefs, it's only about a paragraph long. We won't really need it. When we're looking at longer text, we would definitely use this. So we'd use 4 important facts that you notice, just going down vertically. 3 images or graphs that you notice. What about them? What are they saying? How do they add to the text? 2 vocabulary terms, whether it's ones that we've annotated together or a new one that you felt the need to look up. And finally, 1 interesting thing you found while reading, because of course this is a class about science and inquiry. Finally, we get to the science data analysis protocol. So reading is more than just reading text. We also want to look at graphs. So if we have a new protocol for that, this one's 3 steps as well. The first thing is you need to identify the variables. The x-axis, which is going to be the independent variable, and the y-axis. So in this case, it would be the years for the x-axis, and for the y, it is the CO2 concentration. Then we need to underline or circle 2 key points, such as highs in our data, or lows. This one doesn't really have any, but I might mention that they seem to be pretty stable with the levels of CO2 and the levels of bleaching. And finally, I would do summarizing of the data. So as the years went on, I noticed the CO2 concentration increases. So as the years increase, CO2 increases. Same thing works for bar graphs. We have our x-axis on the variable, the year, and the y-axis has in this case population size, my data points, and my brief summary. My summary be as the years increase. Again, looks like bleached coral increases as well. With a chart, we have something special where we're going to look into our different versions. So before we could use dry mix where we have the dependent and the independent variable, but now we're going to remember that the first column has the x-axis and the second column will be the y-axis. Circle graphs are a little bit different because they don't have any access point, but they still have variables and they still have key data points. So in this case, the variables would be the total population and the amount of healthy and bleached coral. So I hope this helps you to get a brief understanding of what it's going to look like to read data and charts in our class. Have a wonderful day.